Tony Parker, Tim Duncan, and Manu Ginobili, the three names synonymous with the Spurs dynasty. Kawhi was the next name in line. Former Finals MVP was set to take the reins as the linchpin to the NBA's most successful organization over the past 20 years. Then in the blink of an eye, it all changed.
And apparently Kawhi Leonard and the Spurs now have a strained relationship.
Kawhi Leonard wants out of San Antonio.
The Spurs will send Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green.
And in the wake of his departure, it's only left confusion as to how the franchise that's treated its players like family has lost their favorite son. Lucky for you, you got me. I'm gonna cut right through the rumor and hearsay and tell you exactly why Kawhi decided to move on. In order for me to explain why Kawhi left, we must first look at his career trajectory. Today, Kawhi is a premier scorer, but it wasn't always this way. The knock on him coming out of college was his lack of any single skill that ranked as elite as far as filling it up. A rangy athlete with physical tools, but had a limited handle and an inconsistent shot. His first few years in the league proved these criticisms to be true, with almost all of his scoring coming from running the floor, filling lanes, and from catch and shoot. Then came the 2015 season, where he turned the corner offensively, shooting a smoldering 44.3% from three. Not only this shooting from three, but his post-up game took a leap to some sick territory. Now a bona fide offensive scorer, he headed into 2016 making even more improvements. This time, the newly sharpened weapon of choice was his handle. His massive hands allowed him to maintain exceptional control, even under duress, and his signature between the legs dribble emerged as a truly devastating force for NBA defenders to try and cover. And this would also be the last time Kawhi played meaningful minutes with the Spurs. So why, with his powers peaking and the ability to take over the franchise, did he decide to leave? To me, the answer is simple. He wanted to showcase his isolation scoring abilities. Ever since the start of the Popovich era in San Antonio, it's been about passing and making the right basketball play. A perfect place to cultivate the fundamentals of basketball, Kawhi being no exception. And just because you've improved over time to become one of the better one-on-one players in the NBA doesn't mean this philosophy is going to change. Pop is not going to make any exceptions to his system in order to please anyone, and the Spurs as an organization aren't going to be bullied into making trades they don't want to. Well, unless the player simply doesn't play, then they might. Kawhi's numbers in Toronto make this case for me. Kawhi scored on unassisted three-pointers a mere 22% of the time in the 16-17 season, compared to a much more generous 36% of the time this year. On two-pointers, the difference is even bigger, scoring unassisted on 61% of the time in 16-17, compared to 76% of the time this year. And just because Kawhi has opted to focus on a more isocentric style of play doesn't mean he's forfeit any of his efficiency. Even after catapulting himself into a top 5 points per game scorer, he's still managing to shoot over 50% from the field. Now take a look at this. This chart right here tells you how many dribbles Kawhi took before he put up a shot. This was for the 16-17 season. You can see the majority are coming from low dribble situations. Now take a look at this year where the opposite's true, with Kawhi scoring more in high dribble situations. Kawhi's off-the-bounce abilities are showcased more so now than they ever were in San Antonio. But don't just take my word for it. Here's ESPN lead NBA writer Zach Lowe with his take on the situation.
And stylistically, you're right that things are there's a Kawhi offense and then there's an everybody else offense. And to your point, much was made of the sort of the revolution that happened with their offense last year. It was more egalitarian. There's more passing. They're now 26th in passes for the season, down from 16th last year. It's like 20 passes fewer per game. They're 22nd in assist rate, down from 11th last year. They're 5th in isolations, up from 11th last year. And so Kawhi has like Kawhi-ified their offense a little bit. I don't think that's good or bad.
So now let me ask you, can you imagine a Spurs led by Popovich being Kawhianized? Obviously, this whole video I've danced around the topic of the mishandled injury the media ultimately penned as the cause of the departure. But I see that more as the straw that broke the camel's back. Instead, I propose it was Kawhi's desire to be the man, an isolation machine, a role he has so effectively embodied, was the main reason he decided to leave.